I'm feeling like a brand new me. For the very first time, I'm not where I'm meant to be. Brand new.
Welcome to Outsmart the Hustle, where we turn hard work into smart work, helping you focus on the high-impact moves that drive your business forward without getting stuck in the grind. Welcome to this episode of Outsmart the Hustle. I'm Hannah McGinty, your host, and today we have Jese Gary. She's an expert in back office systems and service-based businesses with over a decade of experience as an event manager and certification as a HoneyBook Pro. So she's going to bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the table. Jese, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi. Thanks so very much for having me on this podcast today. For over 14 years, I've had my own corporate event business, and I've really started to embrace the power of teaching other individuals that are in the event industry and different types of sectors of it on the power of really understanding their back office systems and not only just focusing on the creative side of it.
I love that. Like, what's the biggest misconception people have about automating with their businesses, you think?
Is that because every bride or every event that we do may be different, that there's no way to standardize it. I think that that's the biggest mistake. So then what happens is that every experience and interaction that they have with a client is never uniform. So then it makes it harder for them to ever hire someone because there's no consistency in how we do any of the things.
Yeah. So how do you balance automation, keeping your business feeling personal and human at the same time?
The first thing I always recommend for people is just to kind of take it to paper and pen and do process mapping, because even when they are using HoneyBook, I find that the average person goes in and just creates like 25 random things of ideas of templates and hope for the best. And then they're like, it's not working. It's the system. Like, well, no. A computer can only do what you teach it. And if you teach it confusion, then it's just going to be confusing. So I always tell people, take the time to write out process mapping, where you're thinking about when someone first interacts into your system, what do you want for them to receive? And understanding, okay, what type of event or what type of service you book for me may be different. However, there are certain parts inside of my process that are always the same. Whom I'm working with will be the variable, but the process itself is similar. So I always tell people, just take out paper and pen first and just allow for yourself you don't have to figure out how do I put it into the system. At first is getting clear about what are the steps that I'm actually doing. That's how you can truly build something that's human, because you allow for yourself to flow through, like, what type of experience do I want my client to have? What are the memorable moments that I need to create? How do I put safeguards inside of my workflow so that things aren't falling through the cracks and there's any opportunity for miscommunication? Like, write all that stuff out and even think about it from those of us that have teams. What are the interactions I need to have happen with my team members as well? Because all of those things are cogs that can help with checks and balances. Because let's say we're in the vein of videography. You need to know X, Y, and Z so that you can communicate this to a team member. But if you're remembering to ask the client or the event planner the day that you need this, and now you have to rush to get this to your team member, that needed to be a task that is intertwined, where you're reminding someone to give you X information so that you have enough leeway to give that person time to complete it. And most importantly, for you to get it to your team member. But if we say that I need to have this a day before this event, and you remind the client the day before the event, they're not going to get you what you need on time. And then your person isn't going to have that information. So the way you make it human is really getting clear about what are the interactions that are necessary between your clients, team members, or even just with yourself, so that you can have a great experience.
Yes, it boils down to communication, doesn't it? And just so many people are bad at communicating and it shows. So you kind of touched on it, that a lot of creatives worry about automating their businesses because it'll sound robotic. So how do they avoid that? We're getting there, right? Like, how do they avoid that while still saving time? I think a lot of people also worry about maybe their technical capabilities and like what they're able to do, you know?
Yeah. So I think that with HoneyBook, one of the great things about it is that they have smart fields inside of it. And I don't think a lot of people embrace using it in a way when they're writing their email templates. One, create email templates, because I know a lot of people do not even do that. So every
Oof.
time they're responding to people, they're rewriting the emails each and every time.
Mm.
Your reaction says you probably
Mm-hmm.
have seen and heard that. Yes.
Mm.
So each
They need to
email,
be using templates.
yes. And so if you know, like, hey, I'm going to be using this specific email, if you don't want it to sound robotic, think about what are some of the fields that are inside of the HoneyBook system, if that's a platform that you're using, like the project name, the project type, using those fields inside the system so that you know it's client facing. So if you're having an email or if you're having a smart file that is pulling in information and you're not relying on human interaction, because let's be honest, as much as people want to rely on themselves doing it all, we're making mistakes. So how do you remove yourself as much as possible in a way that still gives you that human interaction? So think about, how do I use smart fields in my email templates so that it's pulling in information so that it sounds human without you having to um, do it yourself. Or let's say if it's a recap email. So like I'll have with different event professionals that they may do a planning session or a site walkthrough, whatever it is that they're doing. I'm like, have a recap email. Write you an email template that's already in your system that pops up after this person does this session type, because we're using our scheduler inside of HoneyBook. So if we're using our scheduler, have that it populates as an automation to remind you 30 minutes after this specific session ends to have this email recap email in your queue. So if it's in your queue, you wrote it to say it was a pleasure meeting you for your project type on this day. And these are some of the things we discussed. If you only have to put in 3 bullet points and then click send, that is amazing. And if you're
Yeah.
doing video or Zoom or Google, and we now have our AI notes meter, it's just taken out you remembering what you even said to the person, because it will give you, this is what you talked about. Here are some action items. So all you then have to do is use the template, copy and paste the notes that they're giving you, and now send it to the client. And so using technology doesn't have to mean that it's not personal. It comes down to you as the human creator of your system to make it personal. It's only when we're using our templates inefficiently, we're not thinking through our process effectively, and that's when that type of stuff occurs.
Yeah. And I love the AI note taker that's in HoneyBook. It helps me to be more present because I'm genuinely listening to them and I'm not like thinking in the back of my mind, oh, I need to write that down, right? It's like, no, it's already getting written down and I can be present. And, I might jot down some key things of like venue location or like where they did their first date or something like that. So I can use it in the closing, But for the most part, I'm able to write a really good follow-up email because of the AI HoneyBook. Such a cool feature. I need to know, just for like my own thing, is there a way to do that with a phone call too, or is it just over Zoom calls right now?
They're working on that actually. So if you're in person doing a meeting, you can have it on, and then it will be able to transcribe the conversation. So that is in the works.
Shock.
Yeah. So that will be even helpful for those people that are, let's say you're doing a site visit with someone. You can just have it out and record the conversation with your phone. So you can have your bullet points and you can have those task reminders if you want to create them. And I think fighting AI, fighting the developments that we're having in technology, that is really going to be crippling people's businesses, because your efficiency is going to be what allows for someone to decide to work with you or refer others to work with you, or for them to just even pull the trigger. Like I recently had pitched to someone for an opportunity for one of my own events, for a team building class. I reached out to this person at this point now 5 days ago. She's like, oh, I'll give you what you need tonight. That was on Friday. Fast forward to Monday. Hey, it was a pleasure talking. I'm doing the follow up because this person did not follow up with me. And to be fair, I know that I am not everyone's cup of tea because I am very much so a type A with scheduling and communication. So if you are faltering with scheduling and or communication, we probably will have some interactions that not bad interactions, but I would have some red flags going up. Because as a corporate event planner, our decisions to our ability to choose the right individuals is a reflection of us. It's not a reflection of that person. So
Right.
my lens is very critical because it's a reflection of my business, not of that person. So when that Monday came about, I reached out to see, just to remind the person in case the weekend came and gone and they forgot that they didn't send it. And here it is, Wednesday, and I still haven't received it. So on Tuesday, when the client followed up with me to say, hey, Jesse, this and the other about this opportunity, she's like, did you end up finding someone? I was like, to be honest, due to the lack of proper communication to this person, I don't feel confident in even referring them for this opportunity because they haven't followed through. And this is where when people are so hypercritical about AI and using tech is that they don't realize how much money, like I had this same type of situation occur for a different type of service that someone had, and someone else came through and now works with me all the time. And this person has probably made like $4,000 to $5,000 working with me. And all she does is a perfume making class. And actually it's probably made more than that at this point, if I think about it. So like, just because she replied back and gave me pricing, that her response, which was for one opportunity, has turned into 4 opportunities. And now people are wanting to book her to do things through me for February because of Valentine's Day. All because one person at another company that I reached out to 3 times never responded back. So I am the client in these situations. So we're not realizing, how am I giving my client an experience, regardless if they're the corporate planner or if they're an actual individual. That's what's keeping people getting money or not making money, unfortunately.
Snaps, Jesse, snaps. This is good because it's like we have to think about that client experience, what their client journey is. I was at a open house 4 days ago, and one of the caterers came up and talked to me because they were needing a wedding videographer for their own wedding. And when she said, the last thing I need to book is photography and videography, and I'm like, oh, what? Are you just now looking at it? She's like, actually, no. I've reached out to 6 different photographers, and none of them have gotten back to me. And I just wide-eyed looking at her like, that's ridiculous. I'm so sorry. But they are leaving potential clients on the table just simply because they cannot respond to their inbox. And that's just sad.
But that's the thing though, I've always told people, because often as with doing the HoneyBook setups and things like that, I interact with a lot of different businesses, and people will always say, specifically in the event space, there's so much competition, and I will always say, no, it is not. As a corporate event planner, my experience is no different than that wedding. And I'm trying to get people corporate work. And people don't realize how not using systems, because sometimes what happens is that they'll think, no one likes price increases on subscriptions and all that kind of stuff, or just even paying subscriptions if we're very honest about it. But for that extra, for that $30, that $40 a month so that you can make $40,000 is way worth that investment than not having something in place.
Yes, I agree. And it's like a fraction. Like when you think about your ROI and the potential that it has, that's the difference between a business owner and I think a self-employed person that is trying to have this scarcity mindset and hold on to everything. But the big brain people are over here like, yes, it's going to help me make more money. Of course I'm going to do the subscription. So, I saw that when HoneyBook raised their prices, there was like this whole divide of people who, you could easily see, all right, who's got a scarcity mindset?
Yeah.
Because, we're going to see really quickly how good their business is doing or not based on
Yeah.
like this, it's really only a few extra dollars a month, people. But
Yeah, and I think though, because people often don't understand, and the reality is that a lot of individuals ended up getting into the small business sector, the entrepreneur sector during the pandemic, some out of necessity, some out of choice. But just because we make that decision doesn't always mean that we also understand how to run a business. And that's the part that kind of hiccups a lot of people with getting or scaling to a certain level, is understanding by investing in my business. One, if I price my services correctly, that subscription is not an issue. If the issue is getting more clients, then now you can address that issue. My costs are going to be my costs. My business costs money to run, and that's fine. But it's learning how to, one, the time I have, how do I make it more efficient so that I either can hire someone to do it and they're not going through loops, or for me to do it and for myself to not go through loops. So, but if it's not efficient, be it our client experience, because if our client experience is hectic, often what happens is then we tend to make the customer experience hectic. And when people are nervous, then that's when they micromanage, because that's when I like, oh, they keep reaching out all these times. I'm like, it's probably because you haven't made them feel confident. That is always an indicator, because if you're not communicating correctly, effectively, or at the right cadence, what will naturally happen is someone that's heard horror stories, or they've experienced their own horror stories of someone not showing up on a wedding day or whatever the case is, that they will tend to micromanage it so much because you haven't given them ease in your service. And that's why automation helps, because if they know, like, maybe I made the first payment, I should have something saying, what are some of the next steps? Oh, you can hear from me. Like, how do you give this quote unquote perfect experience in a world that's volatile? Like in a world of your client is busy, you're having new clients, you're shooting new stuff, like all of it's volatile in the capacity of like, there's always something going on. You may get sick. Someone else might get sick. Like, those are things that you have no control over. There's a lot of things we don't have control over. But if we want it to be that, no, we're never taking the time to think through our process and how do we make automation streamline it, what happens is that you're pretty much opening yourself up for just being burnt out and having chaos inside of your business. And you start to hate what you do. And no one wants that for you.
right. Yeah. It's really such a good thing. I think some people fear AI.
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know, this psychologist will come out with a new name for whatever that's supposed to be now. But I wanted to ask you, is there anything that you think AI can't replace in a creative business, no matter how advanced it gets?
For certain types of creative businesses, it won't be able to capture the emotion that's behind what we're doing and the intention. Like, it can create the broadness of it. Like, sometimes I'll use it for like, hey, I have to do this type of team building, X, Y, and Z. What are some of your thoughts? Da, da, da. Like, I know how to feed the right words to get ideas, but is it always spot on? No, because it won't know those nuances, because in what I do as an event planner, there's psychology that's involved in it as well. It's not just listing a bunch of things, because the system won't be able to know those parts and nuances of, okay, there's this type of person that's coming to this event and they're in this specific city and this type of, like, there's too many variables that technology can try to do this best to get as close as possible. But I think that's why, too, for creatives, we have to really start to embrace what makes us unique in this space and really see it like it's like art craft, not something that is very passing or that we are taking very passively, because AI can do that. But like, I think I saw something from Chris Doe. I believe that's how you say his last name. He's a brand personality on YouTube, and people pay him a lot of money just to do a logo. Can you find places to do all these logos, this, that, and other for a fraction amount of money? Yes, you probably could, but he also understands the psychology behind what attracts someone to brands.
Yes.
Will AI be able to get there? I don't personally feel that it will. It may get somewhat close, but you as the creative have to even know how to get it to tell you that,
Right. You have
which
to have
is
the right prompts, but even then, it's like, will it ever get to that point?
yeah, that's the plot twist of it all.
Yeah. Good answer. If someone is just getting started with automating their business, what's the first thing you'd recommend they start?
First thing I would say is thinking about their inquiry process. So the way that I like to look at a creative or service-based business is that we have a four-prong approach to our service, regardless if we're aware of it or not. We have our inquiry phase. So what happens when someone's inquiring about our services? Like, what's that process? How long are the conversations? Are we having conversations? Are we just having them check a box and pay? Like, all of that, you have to understand that. Onboarding, once they do pay you, what is happening when you're bringing them in. The execution is executing the service, all the little nuances about that. And then offboarding is what do you want your experience to be after your client is done. With that being said, the first part that you really need to be present to is the inquiry process, because you want it to be that when people first come into your business, that they are like immediately. Like, I've had it where some individuals have come through HoneyBook for my services, and there's like, how I went through yours, immediately sign me up. I want people to have the same experience as I had, where it was just easy to find. You want it to be that when people come to your service, that and everyone's not your client, and that's fine. Like, if I have someone that cannot click the get started button when they get my email and they keep messaging me, I already know whatever I'm about to do for them, they can't do. And that's not judgmental. That is, I wish them the best. But if I'm setting up a system where the simple things I'm having you execute, you can't execute on the client side, we may not be a good fit. And that's totally fine. So when we're creating our inquiry process, we have to think about what type of clients we're going to have, what are going to be, I call them, they're essentially weeding out moments inside of our process as well, because that is necessary. Because especially as a small business, we're not going to have someone answering every single phone call. And to be honest, we can't even get through our own tech services in general. Like, if you try to call your own cell phone company, they intentionally have all those buttons so that you're not immediately getting someone. So you have to have it inside of your own business where the right people are going through, and the people that just are not a good fit, they're weeding themselves out. So first step, think through, what do you want your inquiry process? What kind of questions you need to ask? What are the things that your person needs to be able to see to help them decide, how do I move forward? Do I move forward, and how do I move forward in that process? And everyone's end client is going to have a different response. Within my consulting side, I don't immediately have people have access to my calendar, because I get a lot of people that are inquiring about my services. However, with my corporate event, I don't have a ton of people that just reach out. So my calendar can be more accessible, because it's two different people that are interacting with my life and interacting with my time. So depending on who that person is impacts how you want your inquiry process to start.
Exactly. It's kind of like the difference from a videographer's perspective between having an automation that gets them to book a call with you versus just sending them a pricing guide. It's like there's a certain type of client that's going to be attracted to one of those two things, right?
Yes.
So it's like, are you sending that to the right type of client?
Yeah.
It's like, what type of inquiry process actually, in terms of dream clients, like, are they going to look at it and be like, yeah, that's for me? Or are they going to be like, no, I don't really want that, but it was more convenient for you. So it's like, think about in terms of like, who's getting it. Is it going to be exactly what they want?
Yes.
So how do you measure whether an automation is actually making a difference in your workflow?
With reduction of stress. Like, if you're still finding that you have to do a lot of notepads all over the place, if things are still falling through the cracks, that's something that is always an indicator to me that something isn't working. And nothing is wrong with that, to be honest. Like, that's how you learn how to make it better. Like, my automation of today is not the automation of like 8 years ago or 10 years ago. Like, you just learn, like, oh, these are the things I need to put in so that things are a little bit more smoother. And I think it's best for everyone to look at what's working, what is not working, and how do you make those changes. So with automation, always think about what are the repetitive things that are happening inside of your business, and what are some of the things that can help with making that process a lot more smoother. So like even how we just did our podcast, I was like, okay, at first I didn't set up a flow. And then people were like, oh, free on this. I was like, oh, I don't do back and forth on dates and times. I need to have a calendar. And then I was like, okay, what are some of the things I need to remember? What are the questions? So you always have to sit here and think like, okay, what are the things I need to gather? How do I space this out? How do I make it so that people are able to show up? So even if you're in a creative business, you just take the time to think. Just write out on a piece of paper, jot it out, so that just makes life a lot easier and a lot less stressful for those involved.
Yes, all the SOPs.
Yes.
So, Jesse, where can they find you?
I am Greeneyedambition, GreenEyed, Ambition, Ambition, which is such a mouthful. I'm actually going to be rebranding at the end of the year, just to shorten it, GEA, but it's still the same thing. But I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, on everything with the same thing, as well as my website is greeneyedambition.com.
Okay, cool. And then when she rebrands, we're going to update that in the show notes for you guys so that you'll always be able to stay connected to Jesse. If you have any system, HoneyBook questions for her, you know where to find her. So be sure to share this with a business owner who could use a little less grind and a lot more growth in their business. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
I'm feeling like a brand new me.
Outsmart the Hustle is produced by Memoir Mastery, a film business course, hosted by Hannah McGinty and edited by Manuel Mesa. Follow us at Memoir Mastery literally anywhere for more creative business tips.